What's going on, guys? This is Hassan from the Spiritual Walks. I hope everyone is doing amazing. In today's video, we're going to be talking about spiritual awakening. Now, you may be someone who has either experienced a spiritual awakening, wants to learn more about it and is currently researching it, or you may be someone who's brushed it off in the past, or you've just heard this for the very first time. Now, I'm going to try explain it in the easiest possible way, without using any esoteric language or out of this world terminology, because I want to make it relatable to your current reality, which, to be honest, is perhaps impossible. It's actually something that can only be understood through experience. But nevertheless, a spiritual awakening is, as in the name, an awakening to a reality or a dimension that is beyond the confines of the ego, beyond the confines of the exclusive sense of I or identity, which encompasses all of our experiential accumulations of memories and habits and all of that which we also identify with. So as we observe reality, what we see seems familiar. When we see a tree that we have never seen before, it's registered as familiar because that's been categorized within all the other visions of a tree within our paradigm, within our egoic identity. Another way to put it is that most individuals live in a dreamlike state because all of that which is perceived is made relatable based on all of the experiences that we have accumulated in life, where a spiritual awakening would awaken this individual from this particular dream. In the same way, if you were dreaming whilst asleep, if whatever happens in that sleep, if you, let's say, die in that sleep, fall off a cliff or something, and you suddenly wake up, the same transition that takes place from that sleeping or dreaming state to the wakeful state, there is the same transition where we can wake up from this wakeful state to a spiritually awake state. Now, I won't go too deep into what is experienced in this higher dimension, if you like, because it's absolutely ineffable. There is no way to explain it or put it into words. The only way to understand it is to experience it. And this, by the way, is the basis of most religions, the goal of most religions. Almost every practice a religion would have is to do with trying to thin or dissolve the boundaries of the ego. When you are, for an example, fasting, you are refraining from food. You are refraining from this physical element that we are so identified with, where when we fast for a prolonged period of time, the value to which we attribute to food drops. And when that value drops, we give less importance to the body as well. And so as we give less importance to the body, we feel less pain. Suffering also minimizes. And so all of these things mean that the identity, the ego, to the image of how we see ourselves begins to dissolve ever so slightly, so that you are now susceptible for a spiritual awakening. The same way with prayer or meditation. When one focuses on the movement that takes place within their mind, eventually we begin to naturally see that whatever moves through the mind is no different to what moves in the sky, such as the clouds. It's no different to how the trees move against the wind. When taking part in actions such as compassion or generosity, we are giving up a part of ourselves. When we are forgiving a particular individual, we are giving up a part of ourselves. And so once again, all of these sort of practices are activities of dissolving the ego. Even when we look at pilgrimages, for an example, or going on retreats, we are leaving everything behind for a period of time. And that's because everything that we do leave behind, society and all of its trends and the media and friends and family and all of that which we are familiar with, if that is left behind and we spend time in solitude in a retreat or a pilgrimage, what happens is everything that is linked to strengthening or keeping the barricades, the boundaries of the ego intact is now let go of. And so when we are alone, there is an opportunity for a spiritual awakening. The boundaries of the ego have thinned. And so spiritual awakening is very much like if we have a certain amount of bubbles in space, where the space inside of each bubble is the same as the space outside of each bubble. But where each bubble is a human being, what is witnessed by each of these human beings is only the space within the bubble, because there's a boundary that distorts the space that is outside of the bubble. And so what happens is when that bubble pops or a spiritual awakening takes place, one is able to see the unifying space that encompasses all. Now, having said all of this and mentioning that spiritual awakenings are ineffable and indescribable, and that the only way you can understand it is if you experience it, a natural question may spring up, which is, okay, how do you experience a spiritual awakening then? I did briefly mention that religions are there to try and prime individuals to experience a spiritual awakening. But I will share with you my own personal opinion, which is that there is no one way to experiencing a spiritual awakening. However, introspection, self-reflection, and questioning reality, questioning our conditioning, questioning the essence, the very fundamental elements that keep our entire belief system intact, that makes it inevitable for you to experience a spiritual awakening. Because there is no stronger tool to thin or dissolve the boundaries of who we think we are. Now, I'm going to wrap this up by saying that we've all heard the term that you are not the center of the universe. But believe me, this is really the way to experience it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video, and I'll see you next week.